So, welcome everyone to today's session. So we are at 4:30 and we should start already. So today's session we'll have user management and authentication. So as already mentioned in the beginning of the series, we are following the objectives of the LPIC-303 security stream. So let us see what are the topics that are included in this stream, in this topic. First is understanding and configuring the network service switch, understanding and configuring PAM, or so-called pluggable authentication modules. We want to learn how to enforce password complexity policies and how to enforce them, enforce periodic password changes, lock accounts automatically after failed login attempts that we can choose after how many login attempts an account should be automatically locked. Configuring the security system, configuring the NSS and PAM with SSSD, and configuring that with Active Directory, the free EPA server that we had last time, LDAP, Kerberos, and local domains. And then we look at Kerberos and local domains and obtain and manage Kerberos tickets. However, as you see, there's a lot of topics, there's a lot of things that you can discuss in here and to see, so we are not going to be able to discuss this in this series however, we are going to follow, so we are going to discuss today the following topics, which would be the four ones: understanding and configuring NSS and PAM, enforcing password policy, complexity policies, and periodic password change, and lockout of accounts, locking accounts automatically after failed login attempts. And the rest will be discussed in the coming series, in the coming session of the series. So let us start with the first one. So understanding and configuring the NSS, or the so-called name service switch. So what is a name service switch? It's actually a module that handles calls, any calls, operating system calls that aim to retrieve data from either, this can be local operating system databases, files, for example, such as passwd or groups, shadow hosts, etc. And also from DNS, or the network information service, and the LDAP. How can we configure all this? We can configure this by going into the etc. So I'm putting now, I'm not sure if I shared my screen correctly. So I think I shared only the web browser. Let me check that I do this in a correct way so that I can use the terminal from now and then. So now the terminal should be seeable. So, and I would like to have maybe a feedback if the terminal can be seen, is shared on the screen from the participants. Okay, perfect. So let's then check what we have actually in here. So this is what we have, and as we already said, that it manages calls that try to identify or to get files to get information from files or databases on the different levels. And on the one side, you have the different categories. So if you are looking for for passwords on the passwd, group or shadow file for identifying, or for users and identifying the password, the host names, network names, services, remote procedure call, and so on and so forth. And you see that on the right side, we have how actually the service is going to handle this. So if we are looking for passwd, so it is actually a file, so it is going to look into the files of the operating system, and so on and so forth. So in here, we can configure and add, let's say, a DNS server, as it is here, for example, for the host. So for host, let's say it will go into the file, so into the resolve conf file, and to see if it can resolve the name, and if not, it will then look and I'm sorry, into the DNS. Into the DNS server that is first implemented into the operating system itself. And we can add here even external ones, and we can add, of course, and also LDAP. So this is it actually from what you need to know about this. What we have, another thing we have are variables which control the behavior of the name service switch, and the variables that control this behavior we can find under let's go etc default, so which are the default values, and we can see that there are a couple of variables here. So net ID authoritative, service authoritative, setnet batch read, and so on, adjunct as shadow, and so on and so forth. So usually these are set, as you see, these are commented out, means that they are handled as to be equal to false. So this is, let's say, they are by default conservative in order to not use, let's say, unsafe data. It can be costly in some situation, well, especially when databases are large, in which we are aiming to retrieve information. Some modules, for some module system administrators can request here shortcuts. However, it is the responsibility of system administrator, depending on the specific variable and what it actually needs to be done to understand if this is okay for the context. So this is it actually about the name service switch. So let me go back to the slides, and we continue with the next topic, which is the PAM. So it's the PAM, the Pluggable Authentication Module. So Pluggable Authentication Module, it's unlike the name service switch. It does not extend existing databases. However, it uses modules as a logic. That means this is again a system module that allows different services based authentication and accounting for multiple sources. When you use this, so let's say we have commands like login or super user or other ones that need authentication, right? So these commands, in order to perform an action, in order to do something, they need to authentify first. And before to, and if they need to do authentication, so one possibility to implement this is that all these commands, so on the left here, so the login command, for example, it implements the authentication. However, as you can imagine, this is not very flexible, and it does not make really a lot of sense. So it cannot scale very well, especially if something changes into the authentication procedure, if something, if some authentication protocols become unsecure and have bugs. So it means that you need to go and to change all this into the specific commands. In order to use this flexibility, so PAM itself, so the pluggable authentication module actually provides is a kind of a middle layer that takes this into account, and it's responsible for, let's say, forwarding the authentication to the right authentication source. To do so, the different commands do not need to do much more except of using specific libraries. So I put here just as an example, libpam. So there are different libraries that these commands and these programs can refer to and can use in order to use PAM authentication module. And the PAM authentication module itself, it can be configured. So the configuration files of the this module are to be found in etc pam.d and also to be found under the lib security. So you have the different modules that you can use in order for the different let's say authentication sources that you want to use, right? So, and below you have the authentication services. Let's say, like for example, login would use passvd as the authentication source. It would need to attach to the libpam library, and with that, the libpam library would then connect or would let's say attach a module that you will find in the lib security that is written especially for this for the login, and then it will forward that to passvd database. So this is how this mainly works from an architectural perspective. So let's see, for example, now let's go into do some examples. Let me clear this so that I can see something. So let's see if PAM is implemented for the logging on this system. So let's see to what libraries this is referring. Yep. Yeah, so you can see here that there are libraries that the login process is forwarding to PAM, and these are both libraries in here, especially so libpam.so, which is the module itself, and libpam miscellaneous.so. So these are two libraries that the logging program is actually using. So we now know that logging, when we type login and we want to log in into the system, this is the authentication is going to be done through the PAM authentication module. So let's see the PAM configuration file. So what we find actually in there. So so here we find different files, and if you can see in here we also have a login file, and this file is actually the one that we need to create. So for all the programs that you want them to use the PAM, you need to have a file in this folder where you configure actually how the authentication then is done via PAM. So which modules, authentication modules, are going to be used by the logging. So this is actually giving, let's say, the insights of how logging is going to be executed. So if we take a look at this file, so let me scroll up. Yeah, so here is, let's say, a command, and you see there are like 3 columns. So you have the first column where this defines the phases of the authentication procedure. And we have different options here. So the first one is auth, which means this is the phase when the user authenticates, when the user says, I want to authenticate, and it provides credentials. So, and in this phase, for example, we say this is optional. So these are the way how PAM is going to handle, let's say, this is going out to handle the options. So how is going to handle this authentication? And this is, for example, fade delay, so optional. So if the authentication is failed, then a delay of a couple of seconds, some seconds, maybe I need to check what actually this means in exactly, but there is a time interval that this is waiting before it can be used again. So this is something I have inserted. So actually we'll come into this again. So we this is the tally, which is actually for counting the authentication attempts, and we will have a look at it. But I was working around that for preparing the demonstration. So this is the authentication. Again, below the authentication, you find, for example, the so-called session, right? So, and this is a session which is specific to a service that is established. And in addition to session, we had the optional, and we have also account, which I cannot find in here. Yes, yeah, we have here. We have account here, even though it is actually commented out. You have the account here, and this is where restriction with respect to the account are taking place. So in a sense, for example, time restrictions or IP addresses restrictions that you can do while after you have been authenticated. So you have passed the authentication phase, you go to the next phase, which is account, and you deal with that, and you see that if you want to restrict that account to a certain specific limitation, as I said, IP addresses or times interval. So these are actually what defined, and what you see here, we have also include. So before I forget, so it's good that I scroll down. You have also an include, and this include, it adds, let's say, different, or let's say generic files, because this login file that we just opened, this is specific to the login program. So if we call the login command will look at this file and will then call the different modules of the PAM for handling the authentication and in a kind of a central manner, or modular actually way, fashion. Nevertheless, there are common ways, or there are common generic ways into the authentication protocols, and you can write this, for example, what you do when for an account, for a session, for password. And if I'm not mistaken, we should find again here include the common authentication. Yeah, so this is the standard UNIX authentication. So let us check actually to the standard UNIX authentication what we can find in here. So this is even shorter, as you see. So what are this? So this is the first one's authentication success one. PAM UNIX. So this is using the PAM UNIX module, which is let's say one of the most important modules. What else we have? We have PAM deny. So meaning if this authentication didn't work, then actually the authentication is going to be denied. So the user is going to be denied, and after the deny, if this is not being denied, it's the required or the permit. So this is allowing anything, and we'll have a look at this modules in the next slides anyway. Nevertheless, what I want to also mention here, we see that we have in the second column, we have so-called requisite and required. And we have, if I go in here, maybe I don't know if we have it here. So we have required, optional, we have optional, and we have also sufficient, but which I don't see in here at least. Yeah, I'm not sure now if I can find, but there is also sufficient. And what do they mean? If we say required, it means that this authentication module needs to pass successfully. And if the user identifying itself for the authentication, if it is authenticated successfully, then this is going to provide the user with further steps and accessing to the system. But if it fails, the authentication is not going to be denied right away. So if it is required, it's not going to be denied right away, but it's going to go through the next, let's say the next row that it finds here in the file. And it's going to process the file completely. The difference between requisite and required is that they are both the same. So if the authentication, if the user is being denied to access at the end of the login procedure, the user is going to be denied access immediately, right? So what we have here is a difference. So in the required, it means that the login procedure is going to be executed to the end. So all the steps of the login procedure are going to be executed, and there can be also traced, meaning that if you have systems when you actually also want to hide what programs are being called and what is the login procedure doing in the backend, you should use the option of requisite, because the requisite, in case it denies, the access is denied, the login procedure is not going to be, let's say the access procedure, the authentication procedure is not going to succeed, but is going to be stopped right away. The sufficient is when when it is passed successfully, then the user is granted access. But if that is not passed successfully, then, as I said, the next row is going to be processed if there is a row in there. So this is it about. Yeah, so let me check if I forget anything that is important to say and to know for the exam. Forwarding authentication to pass VD and denying in case authentication does not succeed. Okay, so we'll have a look. Usually you'll find these libraries at lib security. Nevertheless, in my system, they are under the following. So if maybe so as we see in here, we have the PAM modules, and we are going to talk also about these modules in the next slides. What are the most important ones? The one is, for example, the PAM UNIX, which it forwards to the PASVD file, and so on and so forth. So these modules, the idea is here that if something with one of these modules, or you have, let's say you want to use biometric identification, authentication with your system, the only thing that you need to do is to create such a module that actually is handling this authentication. And all the programs, then all the applications that are running on the system that need to authenticate against, let's say, through biometric identification and authentication will use that module, and you don't need to touch on this program. So they are just using the lib PAM, the PAM library that then it forwards in here, and you need, of course, to add the specific file into the configuration of PAM. So because you are configuring PAM to use it for what, right? So you need to configure the PAM.d for to use it for which reason, and here you have the modules under this. Yeah, so we now have seen what we have in here. So usually you would find this in under lib, either lib security or lib 64 for 64-bit platforms. So the PAM gives us an overview about each module. For instance, let's me clear this. So if we go into PAM, we will read, let's say, an overview or what are the PAM modules actually doing. So, for example, PAM conf, you have the configuration files. What was the UNIX? Yes. Yeah, so here is the UNIX, which is the module for traditional password authentication using the passwd and the shadow file in the UNIX world. So we have, for example, PAM time for module for time control access. We have two, so tally and tally2. So there is a new version for it for logging the counter module. What else do we have in here? Yeah, so in the files we have the in the slides I chose the secure TTY, which is the what are the secure terminals that are going to be used by the root. So let me go in here and see what the security secure TTY tells us. Yes, so secure TTY, it limits root logging to special devices, to special terminals. So this doesn't say a lot, but in here, what is important here is this one. For canonical use should be listed as required, means that this should be listed as a required option, meaning that if this authentication is denied, then the access is denied, and before any sufficient authentication methods. Because as you remember, if we have a sufficient authentication method and this succeeds, then you are able to access the system. So it doesn't make any sense. So the order is also very important in here, in which order this the different options are there. And the next important information is here. The module types provided is the auth. So you remember the four different phases that we talked about. So auth, account, what else did we have? We had session, and so the fourth one, I just forgot it now. So you don't need to learn this by heart. As you see, I haven't learned this by heart, but you have like this four different phases in the authentication process. And here you can use this only for the auth module. So if we see another one, So let's actually see if this is in the login. So let us see. etc PAM D, if we can find this. Actually, we should find this because yeah, so as you see, this is being used also in logging, telling which actually, if you are logging, which virtual terminals are thought as means that they are considered as secure for logging into the system. Yeah, so the include, I just forgot the include. So we have authentication, account, session, and also the includes in here. I was just curious now which one I forgot. Yeah, so let's continue with the next one. So here we have a couple of, let's say, modules that are the important ones. Yeah. So we have on the first place the PAM cracklib or the PAM password quality. So you can use either one or the other. The cracklib or the password quality give the opportunity to enforce the let's say the complexity of passwords. So the cracklib, as it says, it will look at different databases and it will make sure that the password the users are using, so all the users in your Linux operating system would not use like simple passwords as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever, test or hello or whatever you name it. Anything that is in dictionaries and so on and so forth. So before I tell you a lot, let us look at what actually cracklib is doing. Oops. So maybe I need to, oops. Yeah. Okay, so what it is checking actually? So it is checking if the password is a palindrome, if it has a case change only, if this is similar, whatever, to different passwords, if it is a simple one, if it is rotated, so if the new password is rotated version of the old password, and so on and so forth. So it has here a couple of options. Let me go to the end of the document so that we can scroll up and down. So this is what it is checking, right? So this is what the module is checking against this, and you can even give options. For example, retry. Prompt the user at most n times before returning with an error, right? So the default is 1. The minimum length of the password you can put in here and say that the password should have a minimum length of 8 characters or 12 or whatever. The security requirements are necessary depending on the context, and so on and so forth. So you can go, you don't need to, as I said, to learn this by heart, but you should be at least aware that these are the options that you can use for and the crack library. So the password quality, it's the same. So it's actually just a new version of it. So in here, bad words, for example. So it has a couple of more options that you can use with respect to the crack library. So it's doing also again a dictionary check. And for doing this, as you see, it's using the crack lib. Yeah, so for doing a dictionary check, the password quality is actually using the crack lib routine. So what is the next one that we have on the list? Well, is the PAM UNIX, and we the PAM UNIX we already saw. Let us still open it and see some the module for traditional password authentication, and what you can do in here. You can have, for example, to use a specific hash. So, like, for example, you wouldn't want to use when the user changes their password next encrypted with MD5 algorithm. So you don't want to use the MD5, but you would like actually to use one that is that is considered secure, like for example SHA-256 or SHA-512, and so on and so forth. So you have also a couple of options here that you can use for the common or using traditional passwords for making them secure. So the deny has not much, as you will see. So the deny has not really much in here. So we are in here, yeah, so exactly. So the locking out the PAM module, what you have in here, so you don't have any options. Actually, you can use this in all the module types, the account, authentication, password, and session. So the password is actually this what we are talking about. If we use the crack lib, you usually would use this in the password phase, right? So you have the authentication phase, the account phase, and the password phase, and the include was only for including generic files, just to correct myself in here, and then the session in any specific service that is established. So in the password phase, you would have actually one of these, what we have seen, the crack lib or the password quality. And yeah, so you have some examples. Yeah, for other, these are the user's authentication required, and so on and so forth. So let me go out and see the permit is very similar to that. As you see, the permit can be used in all modules, and it doesn't have any specific options. Time, which the time it limits, allows specific time ranges for when specific user log in. You can use this so in the account. So as you can restrict the account from a time perspective, saying that when a specific account can log into the system, so when it is allowed to log in, let's say, so you have user accounts that are working on your system, and you know that your users are actually working from a specific time interval, let's say whatever, Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you can even configure that in that granularity and say that these accounts can authenticate and can access services only within this time range, right? So you can really tie this to the specific time. Yeah, so what else is here to say? So yeah, so that's it actually. And we have also limits, and limits is also interesting because so limit says that it limits the resources. By default, limits are taken from the limits configuration file. So you need actually to configure those limits into the limits configuration file, and we can have a look in there. But you have also individual ones, especially in the limits D, that you can configure how much whatever, let's say, resources should be used by, well, you can basically use the ulimit settings, right? So these are the ulimit settings of the system that are being used, and allows you in the .conf file, you are allowed to add the ulimit settings in a modular fashion, for instance, to some processes during the login and so on and so forth. So what else? Yeah, so the tally I just said, so let us maybe check this and let's see. So the login counter, telling option, the options, and here on error file and so on and so forth. Account options is in here when we can use this under the account or authentication phase, we can use the tally. So either after the authentication has taken place, or in the account, during the account phase, in the authentication process, we can use this option, the tally, and count what are the number of accesses to the system. So then what do we want to see next? We want to see next, for example, we want to see next, let's see, let us go to the etc PAMD, and let's grab PAM limit, and to see where this is actually being used. Okay, so we are seeing, for example, I'm in here into the system. I'm logged in through SSH, and we are seeing that in the SSHD session, we are using the PAM limits. So let us open this file and see what it tells us. SSA limits. So this is being used in here, required, and I've had it in here. We want to add this super hard maximum. So we want to configure the limits, and we need to set up in here, set up user limits in here. So if we want to set up user limits for the current user, so let us first see what we have in there. Security limits conf. Yeah, so for example, let me open a new shell. So, and if I log in here, you see that I can log in here again, right? So let me log out, and let us change this file. So we, and if we change this, and we uncomment this, now this we have the case that this is uncommented. So we have the user in here. So how can we set limits? So in the limits config, so you have the domain, when the domain can be a user, group name, and so on and so forth. So you have the type, it means either soft or hard. So you use actually hard in here if you want that limit to be if you want to be sure that the limit is actually being used. And you can do this for different resources, right? So you can do this for different resources, and to show this example, we're making this a little bit more comprehensive and simple to follow. We can use the max logins, as I've already used in here. So let me go out and let me try it again in here if I can log in. And as you see, this already is being denied, right? So this is how you can use the PAM authentication modules in here. You can see, for example, well, that this is already working. So if I uncomment this, so if I comment this again, and if I try now to log in into the server, it will let me in, right? So what it means that we have only one maximum login on the server. So you can really tighten the security of your server, of your Linux machine in there, that only, for example, one SSH login is allowed from one user. So even let's say if something goes wrong, then you would at least identify. If you cannot log in yourself at a specific time, you would at least get some information that maybe someone is actually already logged in into the system with your credentials. Yeah, so what else do we want to see? So let's see the tally. So the tally is something that we wanted to see, where we want to force the accounts. So how many times you can do an account, and let's see where this is being used into the different files that we have here. Okay, so we have in the file login, we have authentication. Yeah, okay, so this is what I was telling you in the beginning, so that I already was using this. Let us see now what I have input into the login. So let us open login again, and I put this up so that I can find this clearly. So in here, so you have requisites. So I've chosen requisites so that this doesn't continue because I don't have, I don't want to type any passwords. But as you see here, so if we put login into this other one, okay, so login, I want to say sudo login as superhero, and I'm not typing any password. I'm trying to log in, and this is saying superhero again. Superhero again. And as you see, it's going to go to the maximum that it is being actually implemented into the system, which is 5 times. And the maximum is exceeded, so it tells us. Nevertheless, with the account, with the tally account, we can actually so maybe let me open first the yeah, so we want first to read the PAM tally twice so that we understand a little bit what options do we have. What can we do here? So deny access. Yeah, so this is the option actually that I was looking for. And we can deny access if the tally for this users exceeds number n, right? And the n we can provide, and we have also the option of lock time, always deny for n seconds after failed attempt. Magic root. So this is also something that you might want to use, saying that if the module is invoked by a user with the user ID is 0, so let's say the root user, the counter is not incremented, because otherwise you would lock yourself out as root. So the system admin should use this for user launch services like SU, otherwise this argument should be omitted, right? So if this shouldn't be used for the user itself. What else? Yeah, so we have the magic root, and yeah, so this is the account options that you can use only in the account options, and these are the options that you can use in the authentication phase, right? So we can use the deny, the lock-in time, the lock time, and let's see what happens now that we want to change this. So let us change this. So let's say per user. Oops. And we want to say deny, let's say after 2 times, unlock time, let's say 30 seconds, right? So it's going to lock the user after it tries to authenticate 2 times and it fails authenticating, it is going to lock it for 30 seconds. So let me store this and let's try this again. So this was the first time we tried to log in. So, and as you see here, account logged out due to 13 failed logins. As you see, I was trying and preparing this. So there are a couple of times that I did this. And now if we set 30 seconds, so if we try it now, we are not going to be able to log in, right? So if we now wait at least 30 seconds, we will see that this is going to be able. So it's going to be possible to do that. In the meantime, let us check how this has been actually protocoled into the logs. And under auth log, you will find this. So exactly. So here we see that the tele user, for instance, in here, you say that PAM tele has been used, the module and the user superhero tele 15. So the tele counter, failed counter in general, it's 15, and after 2 counts in the row, this is going to be has been denied, right? So, and I think with the 30 seconds probably have already gone. So let's try our luck. And if you see, so it's actually already giving me the possibility to log in again, and I can also try a second time. So now it locked me out because there's a second time again I entered a wrong password. PAM Tele 2 would give us an overview actually about the users. Yeah. So as you see here, there are a couple of users. So the root user said in January 23 failures, the superhero 70 failures, and the LP user 18 failures. You can reset this. So let's say, for example, you want to reset this for a specific user by saying reset -u superhero. And this is going to be reset. So if we see now the superhero users is not anymore into the list. And if we try to log in with the superhero user, and we are going to be logged out again after 2 times. Or did I change it? Did I change it in here? Okay, so let us check. So what do we have in here? PAM Tele. Yeah, so we have super hero that it failed for 3 times, and after the second time it was actually locked out. Yeah, so that's it from this side. So let me close this and let me clear this and let me see what else actually do we have. Yeah, so we want to do a periodic password change, and we can have a look on by using the change age superhero, for example, and we can have a look in here. Let me take the LPIC user. And as you see here, you have a last password change. You have password expires, password inactive, and account expires, right? So number of days working before password expires. And by setting those changes, so if we look at the command age, you have the possibility to choose, for example, with the -E, capital E, you can have the expired date of the account, and so on and so forth. So you have the minimum days that the password should be available. If left, let's say, if not used, then the default is that value of 0 is the default. If M is the maximum, so let's say the maximum day is valid, plus the last day is less than current day. So with that, you are able now to force user or enforce actually a periodic password change. Yes, so that's it actually. So we are come to the end of the current session for today. If you have any question, I'd be happy to take them and to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for your attention, and hope to see you next time again with the next topics that will follow within the user account and management. So let me check if there are any questions in the chat. So I don't see any questions. Well, I hope this was informative to you and you enjoyed the session. So thank you again for your attention, and hope to see you next time. So bye-bye.